Okay. I've talked about something called American diabolism a lot on my stream recently, which is a tendency I think leftists tend to demonstrate, where they recognize correctly that America is an evil institution produced by Satan. So from that, they sort of infer incorrectly that America being bad must be like the fundamental tenet of morality around which like the universe revolves. So everything has to be America's fault no matter what. I think this form of analysis is really bad. I think it was probably most like effectively demonstrated on my channel when I had a debate with a tanky back in 2020 while I was playing Alien Isolation on a late night stream. And I distinctly remember in that debate, he was arguing that Stalin only sent gays to gulags because American imperialism was putting political pressure on him from afar, and he had no choice but to do that. Or something like that. Which I think at that point, if that's the level of analysis that you're engaging in, if that's like how you're approaching this particular topic, yeah, I feel to to put it lightly, I think your analysis might be faltering somewhat. Okay, so enter spineless bitch baby Michael Tracy, right? Michael Tracy is a guy, I think. Um, I talked to him once. He's enormously spineless. His main job, essentially, is to pull people to the right and try to find ways to make left-leaning people think moving right is like the cool thing to do. I had a debate with him, and in the debate, he was like in every sense, this guy's reactionary. Like Buddy Buddy, Tulsi Gabbard, Tucker Carlson. Um, he like would not answer whether he thought trans women were women, and he was arguing that Black Lives Matter was bad, not because it was politically bad, but because it was hypocritical for left-leaning people to support those protests back during COVID lockdowns. But his real position is that he hates trans people and he hates black people. That's his actual position. But his job, and I think he's just a pure grifter. Like I don't think he believes in anything really. But his job is just like to serve right wing interests. Okay, this is about the United States caused the Holocaust take, right? How did you know? Based NAFO warrior, whoever the this is, it doesn't even follow me. Never mind, not based, has compiled a short list of tweets that Michael Tracy has. It's actually quite a bit more than this. Like way more than this. I think it's actually like twice as many because this was compiled yeah, yesterday, but here's 29 minutes ago. He's still going on, and 2 hours ago, 3 hours ago, yeah. So he's been going on it for a bit. It's an interesting take that he has right here. Essentially, he's arguing that the U.S. is responsible for the Holocaust. Now, he's not actually saying that. The thing that he's explicitly saying, as a spineless person does, is everything you could do to imply that point without directly stating it. So I'm not going to read through all these because I don't hate myself. But if you want to, his basic argument is like, how can I defend the Axis powers without defending the Axis powers? So if you look through it, you can find actually the Nazi Germany only committed to the execution of all Jewish people after 1941 when America got involved in the war. You have here like a Pearl Harbor apologism about how like actually America bad, how like we were the aggressors, how the Lend-Lease policy was like an implement of American dishonesty. Here, when Hitler declared war on the U.S. on December 11th, 41, he cited his justification of 3 incidents. So essentially, he's saying like Hitler was like America like made Hitler declare war on us, and he's going on to like attack the Dresden bombings. Like, look, the indiscriminate U.S.-UK bombing campaign that destroyed dozens of German cities, killed hundreds of thousands of civilians. He goes on about the Holocaust. Is there like another one here with the Holocaust stuff specifically, or was this like a separate? There's yeah, there's a lot here, actually, if you go through it. And there's even more. I mean, if you look at his profile now, I mean, he's still arguing about it right now. Like, look, are you still using Richard Evans, your go-to source in the U.S. and Jews being responsible for the Holocaust, even though he makes the opposite case in the section you quoted? To which he says, I'm going to move on from this topic now, but to give you an indication for how demented the reaction was, here's someone psychotically, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I thought he was going to say psychologically, so I was doing a break at the O. Yep, sorry, massive brain fart there. Hallucinating, I made the assertion the Jews were responsible for the Holocaust, nonstop deluge of this crap. The specific tweets that I saw that were about there's wide consensus that the final solution phase of the Holocaust was operationally initiated in December 1941 after the U.S. entered the war. Jews had not been treated nice for some time. That's the understatement of the century, you know? How do we summarize the position of the Jewish people in October 1941? They weren't being treated nicely, but it was only after U.S. entry they were subject to industrial-scale extermination. This is, of course, Holocaust denial. Obviously, unambiguously, it's Holocaust denial. Did you see he told Sokdan Left that America accelerated the extermination plans by aggressing? Yes. And the reason he's taking all these positions is because he's maintaining, to his credit, ideological consistency for the position that he actually sort of segued into this with, which was about Ukraine. Sorry to break it to you, but the Holocaust was not prevented by U.S. entry into World War II. It was upon U.S. entry in December 1941 that Hitler declared, "The world war is here, the annihilation of Jewry must be the necessary consequence," and then initiated the full-scale mass extermination. So again, this is unambiguous Holocaust denial, for which he is being appropriately roasted with relatively few people supporting him. He said that in 1939. Even if he said it right here, he would still be wrong. But did he actually say this quote in 1939? That would be a kind of a wacky mistake. Oh my God. During a speech at the Reichstag on the 30th of January, 1939, Adolf Hitler threatened the annihilation of the Jewish race in Europe in the event of war, which Hitler started in 1939. The Reichstag speech in the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum timeline. Neat. So yeah, I mean, I could like waste, like we could like try to debunk this, but like the stuff he's saying here is very obviously incorrect. The thing that I actually want to focus on is why he's doing it, right? So, I talked about this a little bit yesterday, but American diabolism, that is to say, the idea that American intervention and everything that we do is always morally wrong, and far right isolationism have long kind of gone in line with each other. Fascists are no strangers to they're not like opposed to lying for their own self-interest. I mean, Adolf Hitler literally petitioned for the support of the poor German people with like basically socialist worker reform policies, none of which he actually implemented. Obviously, he was just lying. He's not denying it. He's saying it's America's fault. That is a form of Holocaust denialism. Holocaust denialism isn't just saying that it didn't happen. It can be lying about the numbers, or it can be attempting to whitewash the way in which it took place, like saying that it only happened because of starvation, because the Allied forces bombed German train yards. And it can also be when you deny the forces that led to it. So, for example, if somebody was to say like, "Oh, I think the Holocaust happened," I just think that like the Jews were the ones who did it as a way of framing Nazi Germany. That would also be Holocaust denial. Even if you're saying it still happened, you're serving a particular political end by not assigning blame as appropriate. Obviously, the Holocaust was going to happen no matter what, because Nazi Germany had long since, espoused genocidal rhetoric against the Jewish people. The basic argument that Michael Tracy is making is that the way to prevent the Holocaust would have been to have allowed the Germans to win. Is that not the logical conclusion of what he's saying? Because he's essentially saying the Germans only kicked the Holocaust off because like we intervened to like stop them. So the natural like the only logical conclusion to that argument is, well, we should have just let the Nazis win, then they wouldn't have done the Holocaust. A phenomenally big-brained, yeah, alt history timeline explanation, if ever I heard one. Um, Fantastic stuff. But the reason that he's going into this is because it plays into the logic of his support for Russia. Now, much in the same way that Michael Tracy does not directly support Russia, but rather says that NATO involvement in East Europe is what prompted Russia to do what it does, and we're treating Ukraine like a proxy war. Wait, he's a tanky? He's a fascist, and tankies are fascists. So yes. He's even talking about Ukraine in this selection of tweets, I think, which are far from the only tweets he made on the subject. Um, oh, look, he's even arguing about how the anti-interventionist groups during World War II in America weren't largely fascist, which they were. Isolationists in America during World War II were mostly Hitlerites who were interested in keeping America from getting themselves involved. I swear to God, I just saw Ukraine in this while I was sweeping over it. Oh, there. Every 5 seconds, somebody analogizes the current Ukraine situation to World War II as a justification for interventionist U.S. policy measures, such as Biden's newly revived version of Lend-Lease. But for some reason, that particular info doesn't get included in the analogy. This is the comparison he's making. He's essentially saying America should not have intervened in World War II because then the Nazis wouldn't have done the Holocaust. Likewise, we shouldn't be intervening in Russia's invasion of Ukraine because our presence there is making things worse for the Ukrainians. This is a common tactic for Russian fascists, the argument that us trying to keep them from genociding people is just making them genocide harder. It's the same argument that he made with the Nazis. The reason I really like Michael Tracy going mask off on this is because it makes it clear that the people who are arguing that our involvement in Ukraine is worsening the situation are the same ones who would have been saying, don't go to war with Nazi Germany. That's Europe's business. And us getting involved would probably only make things worse for the Jews anyway. Though Michael Tracy back in 1939 probably would have been able to just openly say that Hitler was right to kill the Jews, right? Back in those days, it was more socially acceptable. So he would have been one of those like America First isolationists back then, and he would have just been able to openly say like, well, of course they're going to kill the Jews. Obviously, how else will they get revenge for what happened to them in World War One? But and then sort of go on and how it's Europe's war and not our business to get involved. Does it? I hope I'm getting this across. Does everyone understand here that this is like a direct ideological parallel made clearer than it normally is? That this is a much more overt do you understand what I mean? It's way more yeah. Because that's it, isn't it? Really? You know? And as Ukraine's forces march further eastward and we see more and more mass graves and slaughters, which we did, by the way, the big rout that Ukraine conducted about a week ago has revealed more mass graves, more torture chambers, where Ukrainian civilians were brought, tortured, killed, probably raped, no doubt, before being buried in mass graves. Because in terms of like the national character, modern day Russians are the Nazis. They are motivated by similar imperial interests. They are ruthlessly bigoted, and ethnic supremacy over the conquered is the like kind of predominant ideological drive of their behavior, as evidenced by anything their media says. Like, you go look at Russian state media, and they're talking about how Ukraine isn't a real country, the Ukrainians aren't real people. Lenin made a mistake by giving Ukraine like autonomy. Ukraine has no actual national culture. Essentially, it's the language of genocidal supremacy, just sort of filtered through a 21st century lens. We all engage in euphemistic language more often than we used to. 100 years ago, they would have been streaming in, calling their the people they were killing subhumans, and to an extent they still do, right? To an extent they still do. It has been known for Russians to refer to Ukrainians as subhuman. That is a thing that has happened at times, a couple times. And I think stuff like this makes it abundantly clear, like, where that comes from. It's like, well, where are these people? Like, why are they insisting that America and NATO are exacerbating the conflict? So let's listen to this guy who's claiming that America made the Holocaust worse by daring to intervene in World War II, and how actually, it was our fault that Hitler declared war on us, even though the only reason Hitler declared war on us is because he was an ally of Japan, and Japan attacked us. So they declared war on us like that. Like, that's the actual reason Germany declared war on us, by the way. It's because they were military allies with Japan, and Japan Pearl Harbored us because they were mad we weren't giving them more oil, and they needed that oil to kill and rape like millions of Chinese people. That's the reason why. In World War II, we were the good guys. Not exactly a common experience for, Americans in like military history, but we were. That doesn't mean that every single thing we did was good. It wasn't. But we were the good guys. We were on the positive side of things. But in their defense of Russian fascism, people like Michael Tracy have to critique the idea that there ever was such a thing as a good American military intervention. You see? Because sensible people recognize the parallels that Russia and Germany were both monstrous imperialist forces trying to ethnically displace, conquer, or slaughter people near them, and that our intervention, directly in World War II and indirectly through arms deals today, is stopping that. But people like Michael Tracy are on the side of Hitler, of course. They're on the side of Putin. So nowadays, as it was back then, it's not very politically effective to just go in the middle of Times Square and scream, I am in support of Hitler, comma, I am in support of Putin. We must support them in their war to exterminate the Ukrainian, Polish, Jewish, whatever people. That's not very politically effective. It is with some groups, but not with most. So instead, it's way more effective to do stuff like this. Muddle the timeline. Lie about history. Oh, I don't support Hitler. I just don't think it's our business to get involved in the war. It's all the way over in Europe. And also, our involvement would maybe only make things worse. And also, aren't we a little bit responsible for this monstrous thing that happened? Same with the situation in Ukraine, Um, oh, I don't support Russian invasion. I just think that all of this was prompted by NATO intervention when NATO, aggressively and imperialistically politely told Ukraine that they would be willing to hear out their application to NATO in the future. Russia had no choice but to invade following that. They were doing so defensively. Is there not a clearer parallel? I think this is as one-to-one as it gets, frankly. I can't imagine a more like direct ideological link between these two sort of political forces, like these sources of advocacy. It seems very, very, very direct to me. So I appreciate Michael Tracy's effort to give us that history lesson. For what it's worth, though, like these tweets go through to September 14th down here. Michael Tracy seems to have dedicated the past half week to Holocaust denialism and World War II revisionism in an effort to. And look, when he's not talking about that, he's talking about Ukraine. Isn't that interesting? Here he's talking about World War II. Here he's talking about World War II and Hitler. Oh, we saw this one in the big compilation here, where he's actually saying that when Hitler declared war on the United States, we had prompted it with our aggressive behavior beforehand. World War II. Here's him arguing that socialists, progressives, communists, and anarchists were organizing the anti-war movement during the World War II period. Um, Considering the fact that the socialists, progressives, communists, and anarchists were currently getting shot in the back of the head and gassed in Germany, I can tell you with great confidence that actually there was a good deal of left-leaning support. Considering the fact that the Soviet Union would go to war against Nazi Germany, and the Soviet Union represented the bulk of leftist sentiment at the time. I think they were quite fond. You can look, America First, World War II. The America First Committee was the foremost United States isolationist pressure group against American entry into World War II. In September 1940, when it launched, it surpassed 800,000 members. The America First Committee principally supported isolationism for its own sake, and its coalition included many Midwesterners, Republicans, conservatives, socialist students, and leading industrialists. But it was controversial for the anti-Semitic and pro-fascist views of some of its most prominent speakers, leaders, and members. Oh, where have I seen that before? An organization which claims to be that claims to be principally anti-imperialist, that leads in socialists and student groups, but is actually ideologically fascist and led around by fascists. The AFC was dissolved 4 days after the attack on Pearl Harbor because it's actually quite dangerous to be a member of the AFC after we've already gotten the war machine, brought together. Listen to this. The AFC argued no foreign power could successfully attack a strongly defended United States, that a British defeat by Nazi Germany would not imperil American national security, and that giving military aid to Britain would risk dragging the United States into the war. So these are nonsensical claims to begin with. So not only are they isolationists, but they want us to drop our military alliance with Britain? Like, that we'd had for 100 years? Oh, they get conquered, oops, whoops? It doesn't make any sense. Why would you do that? unless you agreed with the Nazis. The group fervently opposed measures for the British advance by Franklin D. Roosevelt, such as the Lend-Lease Bill Destroyers for Bases deal, but failed in its efforts to block them. The AFC was founded by Yale University student Douglas Stewart Jr. and headed by Robert E. Wood, a retired U.S. Army general who was chairman of Sears Roebuck & Co. Wow! Funded by Capital. Not just Capital, chaired by the Grand Poobah of Capital. Okay, phenomenal. Its highest profile early member was Henry Ford. No ideological parallels between him and the Nazis now. The automotive pioneer and notorious anti-Semite who resigned in controversy. Halfway through the committee's 15-month existence, aviator Charles Lindbergh joined it and became the most prominent speaker at rallies. Charles Lindbergh, now who's this fine man? In the years before the U.S. entered World War II, Lindbergh's non-interventionist stance and statements about Jews and race led some to suspect he was a Nazi sympathizer, though he never publicly stated support for the Nazis and condemned them several times in both his speeches and his personal diary. You know, he disavows. He's not pro-Nazi. He just shares their ideological values and also doesn't want the United States to intervene to defend its allies or, stop Nazi Germany. He was against provision of aid to the United Kingdom. Wow, look. He supported the anti-war America First Committee and resigned his commission in the U.S. Air Forces in April 1941 after President Roosevelt publicly rebuked him for his views. Roosevelt publicly called this guy out. Nazi sympathies and views on race. Lindbergh's anti-communism, keep in mind that Michael Tracy is trying to frame the American First Committee as some kind of like politically diverse movement, but I guess it's just headed by Nazis and anti-communists. His anti-communism resonated deeply with many Americans, while his eugenics and Nordicism enjoyed social acceptance. His speeches and writings reflected his adoption of views on race, religion, and eugenics similar to those of Nazis, and he was suspected of being a Nazi sympathizer. However, during a speech in September 1941, Lindbergh stated, "No person with a sense of the dignity of mankind can condone the persecution of the Jewish race in Germany." He disavows. He condemns the persecution of the Jewish race in Germany. Just don't stop them from doing it, Like, he hates that they're doing it, guys, but, like, don't do anything about it, And also stop aiding the United Kingdom as they fight against the Germans. Lindbergh seemed to state he believed the survival of the white race was more important than the survival of democracy in Europe. Interesting. Conservative authoritarian, popular during the interwar period. Lindbergh developed a long-term friendship with Henry Ford, who was well known for his anti-Semitic newspaper, the Dearborn Independent. In a famous comment about Lindbergh to Detroit's former FBI field office special agent in charge of July 1940, Ford said, "When Charles come out here, we only talk about the Jews." Wow, from Henry Ford himself. Oh yeah, when me and Lindbergh hang out, like, we just talk about the Jews. Like, that's it. But Michael Tracy wants you to believe this was an apolitical, anti-interventionist coalition. Historian Susan Dunn has concluded that, though most of the America First Committee's members were probably patriotic, well-meaning, and honest in their efforts, the AFC would never be able to purge itself of the taint of anti-Semitism. It's like George Orwell said, pacifism is an enabler of fascism, and anti-pacifism is, in its proper context, anti-fascism. If a Nazi is going around gunning down blacks and Jews, and a man picks up a gun, and your move is to hold away the gun to keep it from him, you are in that moment acting on the side of the fascist. It doesn't matter whether you condemn his actions or denounce him or whatever the else. That is your contribution to this political effort is to enable the fascist, which is what the AFC did, which is what Michael Tracy is doing. Anyway, I just wanted a sort of political rejoinder here, a reminder that isolationism in the United States has long been promoted on the basis of an implicit support for the people and the political forces that they do not want us to intervene in. In this case today, it is Russian fascists who they want to win. Michael Tracy wants the people of Ukraine raped and killed. He wants their fingernails pried off before they're shot in the back of the head and thrown into a ditch. He wants their population culled, and he wants Russia's borders to extend all the way west to Poland's. But these things are not popular to say. It's not, politically efficacious to be that upfront about it, even though this is absolutely ideologically the thing that they want. So instead, you do everything you can to undermine any efforts taken to defend the Ukrainian people. Much in the same way that our good man over here, Charles Lindbergh, wants the preservation of the white race, is a fervent anti-communist, a fascist, an authoritarian, an anti-democrat, and seems to subscribe to many Nazi racial theories, such as Nordicism. And of course, his real belief is that he wants Nazi Germany to win in Europe, doesn't he? He wants Nazi Germany to win everywhere. He wants Nazi Germany to rule the world. That's his actual belief. But that's not politically popular, which is why he has to frame it as a kind of, principled anti-interventionism. This has been our sort of daily reminder that interventionism is not only at times beneficial, but is actually an anti-fascist necessity in many cases, certainly now.